Good evening, welcome to Worldview Live GBC 24, where we tell the story of Africa. My name is George Asikre, and this evening we are gathered to talk about Africa. If you've been following the news, Zambian President Edgar Lungu has warned the Supreme Court not to dare try to stop him from running for a third term in 2021. He told the judges that they shouldn't try to be heroes or adventurous because that will turn Zambia into chaos. He referred them to what happened in Kenya and said they shouldn't bring Kenya to Zambia. I'm sure you know what happened in Kenya when the Supreme Court announced the result of the August 8th presidential election, in which the incumbent won. The subsequent one, the incumbent won again, this time around by some 98%. In Liberia, runoff was supposed to take place this Tuesday coming, but the Supreme Court has asked them to halt the process. And so looking at these things, Zambian president is taking a cue and is warning his people not to dare. Tonight we are here to look at the implications of such comments and even the way the judiciary is trying to play its role in our governance process. Once again, my name is George Asikre, and I'm here with Mr. Kuku Jani. He is the CEO of Africa Lives and Livelihood Center. And next to Mr. Kuku Jani is the Honorable Caesar Kale. He's a former presidential staffer. And next to the Honorable Kale is Iribad Ibrahim. He is the CEO of Iribad Security Consult. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, George.
Nice to hear George.
Mr. Kukujani, let me start with you. President Lungu's comment, but I think it is important to put it in perspectives. Lungu was the defense minister under President Michael Sata.
Right.
And when Michael died, his party asked him to contest. That was in 2014. The president died in 2014, somewhere August. And in 2015, early 2015, there was a by-election. So Lungu won that by-election to serve the remaining 1 year of Michael Sata. And so in 2016, elections were properly held in which he won a 5-year term. And there's supposed to be an election in 2021. And some people are contesting his legibility. And he feels that the 1-year term he served was just for the late Michael Sata. And so for 2020, he should be given the chance to go. But others think that allowing him to go will mean he's going for a third term. So he's warning the Supreme Court ahead of that. Your comments?
Well, very complex issues, are they not? And it is not only in Zambia, but it seems to me that half of our African states have these peculiar challenges. Some people say perhaps our democracy is not old enough, and that's why people behave like that. I don't think so. I think we have matured in a way that we need to be behaving in a more matured manner. If I hear leaders speaking like that, then I suspect that their advisors are not saying the right things to them. They eulogize the presidents and the leaders and tell them, Mr. President, everything is fine. You're all right. Let's get on with it. And that is why they make such reckless comments. And the chances are that at the end of the day, strange things will happen. I hope that presidents will put their ears to the ground and listen more to the grassroots rather than politics talking. And if they keep on like that, we will not change the script. The script has to be changed. You know, and the masses, the electorates and the citizens themselves will have to be more educated now. The NCC, like in Ghana, we need to educate people to look at politics, policy rather than politics. Because this behavior pattern is becoming a bit like part of our behavior pattern. It doesn't seem to change. The only way
haven't they tried that in Zambia? You know, when they gained independence in 1964, President Kenneth Kaunda was there from 1964 to 1991.
He made it a one-party state.
Yes. Around that time, civil society, the church, everybody wanted a change. So the movement for multi-party democracy came. And when Chiluba took over, it appeared to be worse. Later, he became kind of an authoritarian.
Yeah.
So they've tried the president, one-party state. It didn't work. They moved to somebody who came on the shoulders of the masses. That one too, I'm not too sure it works. So maybe he's charting a better course.
That is why I use the word very complex times we live in. And the issues are that the world is also evolving. So what used to be a one-party state many years ago, I mean, if you look at China and the way they are organizing their governance in terms of using a bit of entrepreneurship and still using socialist policies to move the country forward, you probably have to keep reinventing yourself all the time. But it's not only that. It's a complex issue that needs strong leadership that is not pure politics, but looking at ways in developing the country for the masses to benefit. You know, from what we hear from the World Bank and the WHO and all these organizations, yes, there's a little bit of progress, but we are too slow. And we need to have experts who can advise the politicians. The politicians don't have time to be reading and going through issues all the time. They are playing pure politics. But it's the experts who will advise them and move policy that will be advantageous to the people of the countries.
Honorable, Lungu's comment. His Excellency.
Thank you very much. Let me use this opportunity to say hi to our Chinese viewers across the country. Well, for me, I think that Lungu's comment is a premature ejaculation of his apprehensions.
Premature
ejaculation of his apprehensions. You know, I do know that that country, and for that matter, their electoral system, is being governed by a constitutional body.
Yeah.
Whatever regulates their elections be based on their legal system. And so, if the constitution is there, and people are calling for maybe his inability to run for the third term, for his second term of office, they should go to the constitutional books. If the constitution says, because if it has been in Ghana, yes, it's simplicity. But I don't know their legal. I tried to find out what their constitution says because time was not there.
The constitution says you should run for a 5-year term twice.
And so that's what I'm saying. It's a mature ejaculation of his apprehensions, because the Supreme Court is there. It is there to interpret the constitutional provisions.
Yes, and there's actually a case to that effect before the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Ruling is supposed to be done on the 16th of this month.
And so if the president is actually, I mean, there for the interest of the people, is for him to have kept quiet and maybe observe what the court will say. But you see, I don't blame him much, because you know there's a local parlance that when you're a bearded man, you see your fellow, you know, bearded man's beard on fire. What do? You fetch water by yours, because he's actually looking at what is happening in the African spectrum, and he's afraid that perhaps what happened. Remember in 2016, when he contested the elections and won, the opposition leader, Heledi, what is his name?
Yeah.
Heledi actually sent the case to court. And after the Supreme Court went through, they dismissed it. And so that kind of fear is in him, thinking that perhaps if he allows this case to go like that without he commenting on it, maybe the likelihood that the Supreme Court may side with what the opposition is saying may be high. And so, as he rightly pointed out, I think that African leaders, we need to be patient with our governance system. The life of power is not everything, but the destiny of our people is what we need to hold.
But you need the power to effect the change.
Yes, but I think that
the destiny of
in saying this to the saying too that when you advise the cat, you must also, when you advise the mouse, you must also, sorry, when you advise the cat, you must also advise the mouse.
Okay.
I think that our judiciary, the custodians of our, you know, legal system, our constitution, ought to also be treading cautiously, because the destiny of the people lies in their hands, and any small slip will jeopardize the lives of the people.
So you're saying they shouldn't be adventurous?
No, I'm not. I don't want to use that word, because for me, I think it was a harsh kind of statement made by the president. But the mere fact is that, you see, politicians, I'm a politician. No politician will want to, you know, lose power. And because of the love for power, some overstep their bounds. But you see, of recent, it has now come to be known that when you lose power, you can easily challenge it at the law court. And if you are lucky, and you have your comrades or your likes there, the likelihood that you may get justice or you may get your will, perhaps may be high. Because what happened in what is the name said in Kenya, who the man is used as an example. For me, when I actually read through the Kenyan electoral results and the aftermath, I was not happy. And so I think that, and if you look at what is even happening in Kenya now, where they have even come to pass a new law, that unless there are substantial defects of the whole process, no court can annul an electoral results. And for me, I think that it has come too early. It has come too early. And so, for Edgar's apprehensions, you should have held on for a little bit to allow the constitutional process maybe to go through. But see, as I said, he will not want to sit down and the final verdict comes out, which he cannot protest. And also by doing this, sending this signal, he is more or less stampeding the Constitutional Court, which I think is unfortunate.
Very bad.
They say the law is no respecter of logic.
Okay.
But technically speaking, when you take over from a president that has suffered a demise, you're only topping up his own tenure and not yours.
Yeah.
I think Ghana showed a lot of political maturity when the former president, Dramani Mahama, took over when President Mills passed away.
The two scenarios are quite different.
How different
in
are they?
Zambia, when the president dies, there's actually a by-election for somebody to contest. That election, the opposition parties contest, but whoever wins is serving the remaining term of the deceased president.
And there is no precedent, even though you've taken us down memory lane. So I think that buttresses the point Honorable made earlier, that then this constitution is a bit idiosyncratic, is peculiar to the people of the Zambia. But I think, technically speaking, one full term is more than just 1 year, which he enjoyed. So therefore, I believe, for me, this is much ado about nothing, and it's even too early. That goes to say that there's so much stiff opposition to President Edgar Lungu, even within his own political party.
The margin was too small.
2021 is far off. So for me, for people to be stampeding the Constitutional Court to make a pronouncement this early, and mind you, people's hearts or response towards him may change with time. So he's in his second year, for God's sake. So therefore, just let him bid his time. Let him get to the 5th year. Out of the 2 opportunities he's had, then you can make a clear-cut, verdict that we think the trajectory you are taking the country is wrong and we need a change. He has just started his term, and you are discussing what will happen in 2021. So therefore, fundamentally, I believe that for Zambia to continue to enjoy the lull and stability it is enjoying, for me, this is not an issue at all. And I agree with the president that, yes, they shouldn't be adventurous. It's too early, unless maybe the pendulum, the balance of advantage would, teeter towards the opposition. I think the Constitutional Court, for the sake of the larger good, there are first world countries that stipulate in their constitutions that no president can go beyond 2 years. But in extraordinary circumstances, like in wartime, there are times you go beyond the 2 terms. And the examples are bound in first world countries. So therefore, yes, power, they say, is sweet. And now Honorable and his, ilks are not enjoying the V8 and all the goodies that come, but they are patient. They are waiting for another opportunity.
Not even using V8 whilst in power.
Presidential staffer. Maybe it was a bit modest. Maybe it was modest.
But not for town.
So
cost control.
It's a small.
So exactly. So everybody understands that power is sweet, but I believe you shouldn't just stampede the president. And he won fair and square. It was a legitimate, election.
It was a contested
contested in court, but it was given a clean bill of health. Okay. So I believe that President Lungu should be given the opportunity to stay his course. This alone can disrupt him.
Sure.
So if less than a fortnight from now, the Constitutional Court says that he can't contest again, psychologically, that is going to affect his performance as president. So therefore, I would have rather they waited till maybe when he has gone through half of his tenure, and so they would bring this discussion up. But they should just let him stay his course and then complete his tenure.
Assuming without admitting, let's say, granted the Supreme Court comes out to say, look, whether you serve 2, 1, or even months of the remaining term of a deceased president, it constitutes a full term. Will that not be a dangerous adventure?
There has to be clearly stipulated in the Constitution. In fact, I was a bit jittery when Prof. Mills passed away and we had to swear in the then sitting vice president. So I was, you know, in my own layman's understanding, I was thinking, would anybody contest him going for a third term technically, even though he had the opportunity to complete Prof. Mills's time. But we showed a lot of maturity. So sometimes for the larger good of the country, you can let some of these things pass. The guy is in his second year, for God's sake. And in both cases, he won the election. So it's just like the Blaise Compaoré situation. Yeah. And in Rwanda, Paul Kagame has had his third shot. And it looks like if the Constitution should permit Paul Kagame, he will be re-elected for even 50 times. Yeah. So therefore, is it about hastening the president out of the scene or thinking about the socio-economic good of the country and its larger stability? So from where I sit as an observer, George, I think this is much ado about nothing. It's too premature, and I believe they should let him stay the course and then complete his tenure as president.
Mr. Gugujani, you talked of Africa getting leaders who will chart the course to make the destiny of the people the way God wants it. But you need power to do that. Yeah. And if you are not giving the power, look at the Rupiah Banda. When Awasa died and he took over, the next election he lost. Yes. And that could be a sign, a signal that, hey, you may have good intentions, but if you don't have the power, you cannot. And when he went, the anniversary of the late Michael Sata, he was telling the wife that, look, he will continue with the good works of the late Michael Sata. How do you continue if you don't have the power?
That's the unfortunate side of politics. And I would have thought that if we take our politics and compare it to that of European politics and America, you find that a lot of the politicians within their system are people who have already, as it were, have attained certain roles already in society. And so you put all of them in a pool, you are more likely to pick somebody who can actually do the job. I'm not saying we don't have that capacity here, but when you put 100 people in a basket and you take a lottery, you are more likely to take a few more people than those who cannot do the job. What we find is lack of leadership in the African heads of states, some of them. You know, and to be a leader, sometimes you don't have to go to school for it, but in the system, you can learn to be a leader. You need to be able to think whilst you are standing. You have to be incisive. You have to be ambassadorial. You have to bring people up whilst you are there. You don't do it alone. You know, it's team, and all of this are characteristics of leadership. We don't seem to have that here. We need to have a public service that is public service true and true. And so it needs a combination of a lot of things for the governance to move forward. Let the trade barriers be open. Let's be free trade. Things like that, so that the country can move. You'll be surprised that when you go to places like Europe and America, they are not interested in who does business upstairs in politics. They are not interested because they get good health care, they go to school, they get housing, they get education at reasonable prices. So they are not worried who is the president. The system is already set up. That is what we need to do. We concentrate too much on Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President. Mr. President is only one man. That is why the institution don't work. Because somebody is waiting for Mr. President to ask the institution to work before the institution works. That is very sad. So we need to reorganize ourselves and change the script. You know, if you look at China and what they've done in the last 30 years, it's quite interesting. You know what they did? They said the Americans come here and take what we have. What we do is we send half of our public servants to America to go and restudy and restudy and restudy and come back. They're doing the public services and renegotiate and start negotiating with the Americans. When the Americans went back, they realized that the Chinese have got very, very clever this time. And that they can't be taking things for nothing. These are the practical ways that you can start changing the system. As for presidents, they'll come and they'll go. They'll come and they'll go. Our children will always be here. This country will never go anywhere to be here. For the next 50 million years, it will be here. We need to set the right models. You come and help us. We need to set the right models to move this country. The scripts are not correct. We must follow scripts that work. Look at China, 30 years. Study it hard and you find that they are doing very, very well. They tell you, we eradicate poverty, another 100 million people poverty in the next 2020. That is interesting. UNDPC, what was it, they're going to eradicate poverty in 2040. I haven't seen any signs of eradicate poverty. In fact, what we are saying is extreme poverty, says the World Bank.
Honorable, the story of Zambia is one of the good cases in Africa, from Kaunda to Chiluba, yes, to Levi Wanawasa, Rupia Banda, Michael Sata, and now Edgar Lungu. From independence, you can't see any military man. No. So they've been able to, even though Kenneth was a one-party man at a point, they've been able to move with the judiciary and everything. But still, the story is not all that good. Is it a problem of the system, the problem of governance, or the problem of the people?
Well, I think that to a larger extent, when you look at what is happening even across the African sub-region, it's about the moral attitude of our leaders. You see, when I talk about moral, it's not the moral that we the godly moral that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the moral, you know, in respect of our governance system. What do you have pledged to do to your people? And so you realize that because of power, you talked about power. Yes, power sweet. Power cannot do everything. Sometimes you don't even need power to be able to do certain things. Everybody is here. What power has he got? He can just use the lip alone with proper negotiation, proper communication skills, and whatever he wants to. You can move this mountain to go this way. But our African leaders, by and large, think that it's just only power. And so at all costs, the person must get power. If not, if we are giving the mandate of the people, the sovereignty of the people, to look after them, what will be in your mind? You know, but that is not what many of the politicians think about. That's what I'm talking about, the moral issue here. Immediately they take power, even common promises that they give to the people are not adhered to. Yet he wants to actually stick to power.
Is it a problem of the leaders or the people?
It's not a problem of the people. It's a problem of the leaders. Because now you take Ghana as an example. Run up to the election, a lot of promises were made. If you say you are coming to give free education to everybody, every Ghanaian, you know, school-going child, every Ghanaian child who will be going to SS, I'm going to give you free education. Then you come. Then you say, oh no, I said, no, I'll be going to only first years. You know, can you imagine the kind of confusion and disappointment you have created in the people?
Well, that would not be an entire disappointment, since there are
structural... This is an example I'm just giving. So I'm saying that even if leaders were able to even stick to their common promises, I'll give you water, I'll give you roads, I'll do this, I'll do that. And they come, and there are efforts towards those things. I don't think the people will just rise up like that. But rather, the politician, when he comes, he's first of all looking at his second term in office, or his next term in office. He begins working towards that, rather than looking at the welfare of the people.
But how do you work towards that without solving the problem? A system
that have experienced democratic, you know, processes throughout still be backwards? You know, and so what we need to do, you see, the Western world practice may not be the best for our, you know, I mean, our continent, but at least we also do have our local, our cultural, moral statutes that we need to follow. The African man is bad as he sits here, or as we all sit here. We go to our houses, there are a lot of relatives all over, depending on us. The white man is not like that. The white man, when his child is 18 years, my friend, go and chart your course. And so we have different cultural, ideological standpoints. And for that matter, the African leader, if we want our people to always do what they want, what the leaders want, fulfill the promises that you have given, we must also behave as if we are not the only persons who wants power.
But is it that the people don't want to fulfill it, or the system will not allow you to fulfill?
I've made a statement here. I'm saying that not that they don't want to fulfill. When they come, they have a diversification of their social contract they have signed with the people.
Okay.
For instance, if he talks about providing this number of houses, this number of water, and all those things, he comes in a different agenda. Simply because he's now looking at his next opportunity to rule. So it's not about what the people even need again. It's about what will build political capital for him to be able to, mount the highest office again. So I think Zambia will not just be an exception. It's across the sub-region. So now we have a semblance of democracy, a semblance of good governance, even a semblance of rule of law. African leaders, if we want things to change, must be morally upright with what they say.
Very bad. In the case of Zambia, we don't have records of people who have tried to stampede the judiciary. Chiluba's case, for instance, he wanted to extend his tenure in 2001. The court kicked against it. He didn't argue. That election, his party, which was in power, lost, went to court. The court ruled in favor of then opposition candidate, Levi Wanawasa. Then Rupia Banda's case, the latest one. So the court has ruled and they have respected the court. So should the people be scared, or will the court be scared by me?
I think Zambia, unlike other countries south of the Sahara, has not had its political history punctuated by military juntas, which is good. And I don't think Zambia is doing any badly economically. And so the example you have given points to the fact that, yes, for as long as you are given the full complement of the opportunity to serve for 5 complete years, and the judiciary is going to swim against the tide. It won't allow that because you are the incumbent. So therefore I believe President Lungu should be given the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes things happen in a country, in a nation's history, so that you make considerations, you make some compromise. But it looks like there's something extraordinary about the presidency. Everybody wants to go there. Everybody wants to go to the president. Everybody wants to be president.
I think it's a headache too.
Yeah, so fundamentally I think, and we should show examples of technocrats being successful in life. Tell people you can be an engineer and be successful in life. You can be a private legal practitioner and be successful. You can be a teacher and be successful. But the way people's lives transmogrify within a twinkle of an eye when they have political power makes people's appetite skyrocket in that power.
How then do you explain
that? Mr. Zani would have to work for 3 decades to have his own house. But as young as I am, if I become a full-fledged politician, and then I build 1 or 2 mansions.
In 2 months.
You get a filling station.
I get myself a filling station and all. So it makes it attractive for people like us who are still, struggling.
To buy petrol.
Not petrol. Yes. Who are going through the drudgery of being young people. But you see fellow people you sat in the same lecture halls with, they are politicians, their party has come to power, and their lives have changed. Lives have changed. So therefore it makes it attractive. And there are no good examples of, private people that have made it in life. So there's a mad rush.
But in our case, we know of people who actually, quote-unquote, have made it in life and chose to go into politics.
No, then going into politics becomes an afterthought. I want a situation where you can look the young graduate in the eye and say, you needed not have been part of TEN or TESCON, even though it provides a good launch pad for you to have a career in future in politics. But there can be other things you can do to be successful and be a shining example to others. But if there is so much interest and there's stiff opposition to President Lungu, makes what is happening a bit suspect. The guy just started. Just give him some time. If you need further interpretation from the court, let the man start working.
He's working.
And you can't use only a year or two.
He was actually Defense and Justice Minister under Michael Sata, so he's known the system for some time.
Yeah, exactly, but I believe Mr. Zani and Honorable George, he should be given the benefit of the doubt, at least to go halfway through his tenure. I think this is a substantive tenure.
Yeah.
Let him go halfway through it. It's just like chieftaincy. You can't say it has to go alternate between dates, and because my dad died too early, I'm forfeiting the opportunity to be enskinned or installed chief. I think they should sweep this under the carpet, sweep it, brush it aside, let him do another full term, unless maybe he's exceedingly and irreparably corrupt. Then we would agree. But the indices that are coming, economic indices that are coming from the Zambia, human rights, records that is coming from the Zambia, and do not show that he's repressive, do not show that he's doing anything extraordinary. That makes him look like a very bad boogeyman that is sitting.
The system is actually working.
And the Zambia is doing quite well. So therefore, why the mad rush? Why do people want to cobble him out of the scene? So therefore, these are, germane questions I believe observers on the continent should ask, and I believe he should be given the opportunity to stay the course, because this is an extraordinary situation of the death of a then sitting president.
Mr. Kukujani, like Honorable said, I'm sure President Lungu is just keeping water by himself because of the beard of Uhuru Kenyatta and George Weah and Buake that are seemingly burning, and the fire is coming from the Supreme Court. So looking at the way our courts are beginning to operate, are they becoming a threat to us on the continent?
What I think comments like that do to people is to stress the whole country up. And the stress and anxiety of conflict, of uncertainties, of lack of peace and all that is one thing that worries the populace without them having to say anything about it. So if you are a leader and you have ambassadorial skills, you must know your mouth, must know what to say. You cannot say he didn't say what he said or that is going to tend it. No. You must be very careful in how you utter words, because every word you say commands a lot of weight. And I think there's too much focus on this. Because the power is there, we spend too much time worrying about presidents and their lifestyles and what they drink and what they eat and what car they sit in. Now, we must be concentrating more on the resources that we have in Ghana and how to make it, make something huge out of it. Let's talk about bauxite. And then you say, oh, the Chinaman wants my bauxite. Do we have some data on how much bauxite we have?
You need a president who will be able to come out with that strategy. And how do you get that?
We have Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources.
You are talking of Ghana.
Yes, I'm making Ghana as an example. Okay. So you have data, you have prices, you have everything. You have mapped out where also you can quantify what you have in quantity and monetary terms. So when you're doing things that way, then you are doing the right things. I'm saying that. Worrying about precedents and the comments that they make, yes, mayhem as it may cause, they will eventually go. Whether they cause mayhem or not, they will eventually go. But the country will be there, and there will be human beings in it all the time.
But some of them, depending on the extent of damage, look at DR Congo.
Look at Rwanda.
Mobutu's thievery.
And look at Rwanda.
Somebody says it's the cause of Congo's woes today. The country has not recovered from the thievery of one person. So there are chances that if you have a very wicked leader,
yes.
The pain that will be inflicted will be there for years.
It will be in its own making. Look at Sierra Leone. Look at Liberia. They are just about, those are the phoenix economies. They go up and they come down. That's what Africa is. Goes up and comes down. We need to go out the graph like that. And we want to identify good leaders. When the campaign is on, we must educate the populace to know that, yes, this man is saying the right things. He is not telling us pork pies. What he's saying and what he wants to do is the right thing. And so that is the way we should, NCC for Ghana should be doing that work all the time. all the time, all the time. Because a lot of people who walk on the streets, they don't understand what government says. They don't know what this is all about. Where the president had fish and chips yesterday, he's not interested. He wants money for his pocket.
I remember when I was a schoolboy, I had a chance of interviewing my bishop, His Grace Charles Palmer-Bakel. Those days, so excited. Forgotten the question, but his response was, "My son, if you want to effect a change, target a position." And I've still been thinking about it, because if you don't get the power there, how will you effect a change? And the man wants to have the power. So why should the judiciary be trying to thwart the efforts of some people who want to be powerful in their country through the presidency to effect changes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, well, you see, as Edward continued to say, for me, the apprehensions of Lungu, well, it's legitimate.
Yes.
But the fact is that, looking at what is actually happening, perhaps if he continues to keep quiet, maybe it's too early in the day, and before he realizes his administration will even come to an abrupt end.
Yes, sir.
Because if there's a pronouncement from the Supreme Court declaring him as unfit or not eligible for the next election, it may spark some serious, apprehensions of confusion within the country. And as he said, his government itself will be destabilized in focusing on what is to be provided for the people and rather go after the us. And so I think that it is something that should be learned by the judiciary in general, in the sub-region. It's not just, what is it say? Zambia. And as he pointed out, Ghana, we have blazed a trail, which other countries need to follow. Because if you look at what happened in Ghana, I believe it had happened perhaps in other African countries. There have been chaos. Because I think there were about 5 or 6 points that were contested for during the election petition by, the MPP. And the Supreme Court took time, went through all, and finally said, well, there were these infractions, but they could not substantially, affect the outcome of the election. For that matter, we think that we should dismiss the electoral, the election petition. Well, look at what has happened in Kenya. In Kenya, it wasn't that the infractions that were complained of by the opposition were so germane or so substantial that could overturn the results. It's because they said they didn't follow the processes of transmitting the results. And if you look at it, it was something that was so minimal. But they stood on that to nullify our election.
But that's their law. The law says if you don't go by the procedure,
and that is why Lungu is now warning. You can't use these minute, issues to overturn or to just hijack the destiny of the people.
But wouldn't it have been a good idea if the President Lungu, for instance, had gone to Parliament to tell, look, come out with a law or amend this presidential transition law so that whoever is completing the tenure of a deceased president should not be counted.
This is politics. But I feel that there's a lacuna in their constitution.
Okay.
There's a gap. If not, nobody will complain. The matter has been spelled out clearly that when a certain president dies and is maybe a vice president continues, as has been practiced all over the world, if it is maybe 3 years, then perhaps we will take it as a full term. If it's only just 1 year, we take it as non-scoring. So you cannot have a chance to contest for your full 8th term. But the Constitution, I believe, is lacking, has not made such a provision.
Maybe that's why all these constitutions
are actually coming up. No. If it was something in the Constitution, there's no need for this Supreme Court to rule. Exactly. Whereas there, black and white. Yes. Now, do we need to call on the Supreme Court to confirm whether President Mahama can contest in the election?
That was what I was actually thinking. Because when Professor Mills died, I thought, per my understanding of our Constitution, I was thinking that if Mahama had finished the tenure of Professor Mills and ran for only 1 term, he would not be eligible for a second.
It's there, black and white in our Constitution, so nobody can contest it. And see, remember, what has even happened to Liberia? Yes. If you look at the complaints that actually made the Supreme Court to halt the red one. That is something that, for me, well, in my perspective, is not anything serious. But you see, they now say the court is there. If you feel that the processes have not gone through, well, you go to the court.
So the court is becoming
and the court is now taking the destiny of the people in their hands. So a desperate person like Edgar will tell my friend, don't be adventurous. And he will plunge the whole country into chaos. So, and as I said,
he has fired the first warning shot.
Yes, the first one has been fired. The country has been fired. So I'm thinking that with this kind of issues now emerging, it should be an eye opener to the sub-region.
Okay.
You know, the one thing what are able to deal with it. Look at what happened between Al Gore and Bush. They were clear, infractions in the elections. But at the end of the day, nobody went to court. Look at how everyone happened to even Trump. Trump election. It's an open secret what is happening. Nobody went to court. Africa, we don't have that temperament. And as he said, the opposition may not have that patience to also say, let's set this aside for the interest of the people and allow the process to go through. Everyone wants power. But power is not that heir to everything. Even good negotiation alone is there. And so for me, I think that what is happening in Zambia should be a serious eye-opener, and I believe the Supreme Court will be listening.
Sure.
They'll be listening to people like Edward who speaks across the African continent, so that they don't muddy the waters. It will be too early to muddy the waters, and it will stir a lot of confusion, which will be die. The consequences will be die.
But let's look at the implications security-wise.
Yeah.
Like he mentioned Liberia. The Constitution says if we go and nobody gets 50% plus one, the first two candidates should go for runoff. In their case, the third person.
Was he even a close third or a distant third?
Distant third. Who complain of irregularities. And the court has decided to, halt the process.
Yeah.
If you're going that tangent, what could be the security implication?
I think fundamentally, just as the senior colleagues have alluded to, the three arms of government we have, the executive has had an overarching influence over the remaining two. But so for me, I think it's a bit refreshing that the courts are becoming more and more potent than they used to be. It's quite refreshing that judges cannot be pushovers or walkovers any longer, and therefore they can stamp the authority and tell the executive this process was flawed and we need a rerun or a repeat of the process. Is good enough. But then sometimes you look at the larger good of the country. And again, if this guy is embittered, who knows what will happen? And the guy is going to hold the fort for the next 5 years or so. So if he's embittered and tries to have a more militarized version of our vigilante groups in this country, what happens after 2021 in Zambia? So fundamentally, it's good to make compromise, and you can negotiate and bargain and leave the negotiating table smiling. So those, dissenting voices, if there is something they want to take away, come sit around the negotiating table. And I don't want to also believe that President Lungu is adopting a winner-takes-all, regime in the country. If the national cake can move round for people to take a bite, I believe this sheer preponderance of interest in unseating him should not come. So therefore, you should also look at that from that perspective.
But they've been having alternation of power.
Yes, I mean, even with the... In the case of Kenya, I told you when I returned from East Africa that people who don't belong to Uhuru Kenyatta's, clan feel left out of government business.
For so long.
So therefore, if there is that disenchantment, pent-up feeling of neglect, then there can be this level of stiff opposition. So therefore, he himself should watch himself and make some compromises here and give away some key positions to certain people. Yadema was a smart guy. And Mugabe too, when Shangarai won the hearts of the world, he was a smart guy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come around, let me give you some bits and pieces of the power, and we see how you behave. And Shangarai made a complete mess of himself. Yeah. So therefore, sometimes it's not like the opposition forces are sitting on any ivory tower of morality or better competence. They are just interested in going to the seat of government. And in some cases, they have gone and they've performed so woefully. So therefore, I don't think we should keep, bundling our leaders out of power because democracy says so. We should, let them stay the course. And I keep giving the Libyan example. Libya under Gaddafi, even though Gaddafi was seen as an authoritarian, people from so-called democratic countries with continuous changes in government. As Libya is even at war, there are Ghanaians who are going to Libya to seek greener pastures, even though we are a thriving democracy. So it's not about how many people go to the presidency. It's about getting the job done. It's about bettering the lot of the people. And therefore, I would reiterate that President Lungu should stay the course, and then from 2021, they can decide the next move. But for them to decide in the next 10 days, that would disrupt his presidency.
Well, our time is run out. Let me take your final comments. But Bishop Ishmael Aji Abuaji has been telling us that if you're a pastor, concentrate in doing your work. If you're a politician, do it. If you're a teacher, do it. And I'm just thinking aloud. Africa, I see doing Ketia says something in Ghana. You, the governance expert, you've not contested elections before. And you are telling me how to contest. One, I have actually contested and won elections. But I'm looking at, in Africa, the politicians are the people who go to the ground to contest. The judges are in court reading books. So, who should be dictating how the game should be played? Your final comments.
I think that the power really lies with the electorates, with their thumb. And if they are not happy about something, you see in Ghana, people in Africa, they don't complain. When politicians sit on them, they really sit on, they don't make any comments. They just say, oh, yeah. You must have the ability to make and protest about things that you don't like. Not in a righteous manner, but do things for the government or the politicians to see that, look, we don't like this thing that is going on. And if the public starts doing that, the politicians will sit up. And it is that we haven't got. If you go to America and somebody, a minister or a senator upsets you, one man can just go and stand by Washington, the Congress, and make a huge protest alone. And they will listen to him. That is the way we should be doing things.
All right.
Civil society is too quiet. Wake up. Tell the politicians
I'm told of
don't like
Ethiopia, and I hear under Rollins he said, "Oh, Kankurana me
they do come."
Honorable, your final comments.
Yeah, I think that well, as Africans, especially the judiciary, I think well, as everybody has pointed out, it's more or less now becoming very strong in adjudication. I mean, electoral disputes. But as I said earlier on in my earlier submission, we need to be very careful. The political temperature of every country is very important. When it is so heated up, you can think of what will happen. So I think they need to use their judicial, prowess to be able to, come out with a verdict that will be acceptable to shape the opinion of everybody.
Yes, sir.
And I think when that happens, we are good.
Hey, bad.
George, the more elections that take place on the continent, the more apprehensive we become. So sometimes you shudder to think whether this Western style of a governance system is the best for Africa. Anytime we go to the polls, there is apprehension. And therefore, I believe fundamentally anybody who decides to serve at that, very high level should be selfless enough to serve for the sake of his people. And this guy, Nelson Mandela of blessed memory, set a very good example. He made the most sacrifices, 27 years in prison, in fighting against apartheid. He did only one term. And it is always best when you leave the stage while the applause is loudest.
Well, Somebody say, James Saki saying, good dialogue, but I think we have always been made to think the focus of our reform should be good leadership. Since we cannot make a good leader, our conversation should look elsewhere, and I think the development of institutions should be our focus. The people and influence that. All of us can help build institutions. And Daniel saying, good evening, I love watching this show. Keep it up, and thank you very much for coming, gentlemen. I've been here with Kuku Jani,
pleasure
the
to be
CEO
here.
of Africa Lives and Livelihoods,
yeah.
and the Honorable Caesar Kales, a former presidential staffer, and Iribad Ibrahim, he's the CEO of Iribad Security Consult. I am George Asikri. I was produced by Celestine Navia. Thank you very much for all those who made this a success. Till we meet again, God willing, same time next week. Enjoy the rest of our programs, and pay your TV license.